As an American, crying with them is not enough. The policy of the United States must be better, and while we watch President Obama give $12.8 trillion to the financial elite of the United States, it ought now be clear that hope, change, and yes we can were powerfully presented images of dignity and self-fulfillment, individually and nationally, that besieged people everywhere truly believed in. It was a slick marketing campaign as slickly put to the world, and to the voters of America as was Israel's marketing to the world. It tricked all of us, but, more tragically, these young women. We must cast an informed vote about better candidates seeking to represent us. I have read and reread Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s letter from a Birmingham jail. Never in my wildest dreams would I have ever imagined that I too would one day have to do so. It is clear that taxpayers in Europe and the US have a lot to atone for what they've done to others around the world. What an irony. My son begins his law school program without me, because I'm in prison, in my own way trying to do my best, again, for other people's children. Forgive me, my son. I guess I'm experiencing the harsh reality, which is why people need dreams, but, I'm lucky. I will leave this place. Has Israel become the place where dreams die? Ask the people of Palestine. Ask the stream of black and Asian men whom I see being processed at Ramel. Ask the women on my cell block. Ask yourself, what are you willing to do? Let's change the world together and reclaim what we all need as human beings, dignity. I appeal to the United Nations to get these women of Ramel, who have done nothing wrong other than to believe in Israel as the guardian of the Holy Land, resettled in safe homes. I appeal to the United States Department of State to include the plight of detained UNHCR certified refugees in the Israel Country Report in its annual Human Rights Report. I appeal once again to President Obama to go to Gaza, send your special envoy, George Mitchell there, and to engage Hamas as the elected choice of the Palestinian people. I dedicate this message to those who struggle to achieve a free Palestine, and to the women I've met at Ramel. This is Cynthia McKinney, July 2, 2009, also known as Ramel Prisoner number 88794. Original audio message available here, freegaza.org web link message from Cynthia from a cell block in Israel. Report from the kidnapped passengers in Ramel prison. By Free Gaza Team July 4, 2009. On Monday, June 1930, 21 passengers going to challenge the blockade of Gaza on board the Spirit of Humanity were seized by the Israeli Navy and taken to Israel against their will. All their equipment was taken, and some were roughed up. All were thrown into prison to await Israel's decision on how and when they would be deported. The majority of the group ended up in Ramel prison. Those of us who are Free Gaza organizers had been hearing some news from them, statements, interviews, and letters since they arrived. From the first night, the Free Gaza 21 have been busy trying to get news out of the prison about the illegality of Israel's actions in relation to themselves and the other inmates inside Ramel prison who have no voice. Report from me, I received a 2 a.m. phone call during one of the first sleepless nights from Ramel prison to let me know that in one of the cells, 4 of the FG group had been busy writing a press release on an old phone one of their cellmates had loaned them. It had taken them hours to write the press release. They were just ready to send it out. Could I check my email to see if I had received it? Since that first night I have been hearing more increasingly about the plight of the other inmates of the prison, men and women who have not nearly as good an opportunity as our folk for media coverage of their stories, and not nearly as good an opportunity as our folk of ever getting out of Ramel prison. To Fathi Joadi, Adi Mormesh, Ishmael Blagrove, and Captain Dennis Healy, the situation of their fellow inmates is something they want to talk about and act upon. Fathi wanted to pass on news of what they have been doing inside Ramel prison. He wanted to let everyone who supports the Free Gaza movement know that Free Gaza members are never lost for things to do when it comes to trying to expose Israel's appalling treatment of not just Palestinians, but all people who come to Palestine and get caught up in Israel's abuse of justice and the law. Fathi Joadi has been actively involved in Palestinian rights since he was 15 years old. Now in Ramle prison, he has already managed to organize a meeting with a UN representative and to raise the issue of the other inmates with him. He said that the UN official has agreed to follow up on some of the cases. Fathi has also been in contact with local NGOs to raise the issue of many of the inmates' situations. He told me he wants to focus on the fact that none of the inmates have any access to legal advice or help. Most of the inmates have not been able to contact family to let them know of their situation, and none of the inmates have committed anything that warrants them to be held indefinitely inside Ramle prison. Fathi is in the process of collecting statements from all the inmates, and he is translating them from Arabic. He says the majority of the inmates in their cell are from Arab countries, and they have not had access to their embassy officials. He will follow up with the UN and other organizations once he is released, and contact all the families, and give statements and details to the relevant embassies. Ishmael Blagrove is a well-known documentary filmmaker, and has been speaking extensively about the Palestinian struggle for more than 20 years. In Ramle prison, he has been working tirelessly to get contact with refugee councils and organizations in Britain, to present to them the case of the refugees inside. He says that many of the men from neighboring Arab countries just want to go home, they don't want to stay in Israel, and yet they are not being given the opportunity to speak. Ishmael says that many of the inmates are entitled to legal representation, but they do not know this, nor do they have any idea how to contact any refugee organization to advise them. Ishmael is in the process of establishing links between the refugee councils in Britain and the inmates of his cell in Ramle prison. Fathi and Ishmael have already established channels to publish these issues in Britain on their release. When we called Ramle prison today, Fathi said that Adi had just finished his daily English lesson with the inmates. Adi is reportedly very happy with the progress of his students, and said this morning they had successfully completed an intense session on past participles. Adi Mormesh has also been very active for the rights of Palestinians for many years. He spent 2 weeks in the West Bank with the Olive Coup, Z-Town, and Action Palestine in 2007. He worked with and documented the boycott, divestments, and sanctions campaign, and participated in the World Social Forums for Palestine in Porto Alegre in Mumbai in 2003 and 2004. He has now become a teacher of English in Ramle prison. Captain Dennis Healy, who has been the Free Gaza movement's captain since October 2008 and bravely steered the Dignity to safety in December, when she was attacked by the Israeli Navy, has also been quite busy. He has been giving in-depth lectures to his fellow inmates about life at sea. Apparently there are many interested parties amongst the inmates. Some hope that they may pursue a life on the sea when, and sadly if, they ever get out. They are full of questions as to the procedure of getting qualified to work on and sail boats in the Mediterranean, and Captain Dennis is giving them a good rundown on what they should do to follow such a dream. This is how 4 of our passengers have been keeping busy during the past week. They wanted to let you all know. They also said they realize the news they are sending out is not new to any of us. We have all been working with these issues of injustice for years. But that doesn't mean that every news story about the violation of human rights, about the cruelty, brutality, and flagrant misuse of justice by Israel, should not be published. Our friends are stuck in Ramle prison because they tried to visit the war-stricken people of Gaza, and they are furious at what they are seeing. They know they have generated media interest around the world, and that sooner or later, they will leave Ramle prison, but they also know that the other inmates of the prison have no such privilege, and without our interest in them, they could well be stuck inside Ramle prison for the rest of their lives, or exiled to some foreign country that is not their home, facing a life without family or loved ones to share it with. And so it is for the 11,000 Palestinian prisoners at present inside Israeli jails. Every one of them has a story that ought to be heard. Statement #1 taken by Fathi Jawadi from Ramle prison. 3rd July 2009. My name is M. I'm 26 years old. I'm a Palestinian born in Al-Quds, Jerusalem, and I hold a birth certificate showing this. My family comes from a village called Sawaba. We have 2 houses there owned by my grandfather who fled in '48 to Jordan and left the houses with my aunt. When I was 5 years old, I went with my family to Jordan to bring back the papers that proved our ownership of these 2 houses. We stayed in Jordan for 2 years and then, when we had all the papers, we came back to Sauber. I lived all my life in one of the houses and some of my family lived in the other. We always used to make our way between our 2 houses, which were only minutes apart from each other. However, when the wall was built, it split our 2 houses apart. It used to take minutes. And then it took 4.5 hours to go from house to house. The house I lived in was in the West Bank, the other on the side of the wall, that is Al-Quds. When I was 16, I began the process to try and obtain an Israeli ID so that I could continue to enter Al-Quds and go to our house that was on the other side of the wall. Every day my mother would go to the Interior Ministry to try and obtain my ID. She contacted many lawyers about the case, but although she worked on this for 8 years, there was no result. During this time I tried often to visit our house on the Al-Quds side of the wall, and every time I was caught by the Israeli forces and sent back to the West Bank. When I was 24 years old, I had a fight with a friend. I was caught by Israel during the fight and imprisoned for 1.5 years. I'm a normal Palestinian trying to live a normal life. I'm not involved in any political movement, and I have no security issues with Israel. I'm just trying to live my life, but when I had served my time in prison for fighting with a friend, Israel could not decide where to release me. My birth certificate said Al-Quds, but I had no Israeli ID. When Israel started investigating, they discovered that, when I was 5 years old, I had gone with my family to Jordan for 2 years. It was then that I was told by an Israeli judge that the law states any Palestinian who spends 2 years outside Israel has no right to return. I have since seen the judge twice in the past 2 months. And he has told me that I will be returned to Jordan. But Jordan has refused to accept me. So now I have been told I will just have to wait in prison. I'm very depressed now and hate my life. I'm afraid of how long they will make me wait. It could be years. I'm afraid I will be sent to Jordan. I have no one in Jordan. I was there when I was 5 years old. All my family is in Palestine. I know if they send me to Jordan, I will never be allowed back into Palestine. I will never be allowed to see my family again. And I have done nothing. I just want to be allowed to live a simple life with my family and the people I know and love in my own land. Statement by Dr. Mahathir Mohamad. July 5, 2009. Former Malaysian PM Dr. Mahathir bin Mohamad condemns the abduction and detention of Cynthia McKinney, Merid Maguire and members of the Free Gaza movement by Israel. It was indeed shocking to hear about the detention of vessels carrying humanitarian aid and the abduction and arrest of the volunteers on board the Gaza-bound ships. The fact that the Israeli government committed these acts while the ships and volunteers were in international waters reflects the arrogance of the Zionist administration. That it was committed with such impunity, with total disregard of the international community, further emphasizes how dangerous Israel is to the global peace equation. To add insult, President Barack Obama had very recently said that Israel must allow humanitarian aid to be channeled to the Palestinians in Gaza who are dying due to the stranglehold imposed by Tel Aviv. We demand that the Israeli government to immediately release the volunteers and the vessels, including the aid on board, unconditionally. Failing which, we expect President Obama to walk the talk and take Israel to task and to ensure the immediate release of the volunteers and boats. We hope President Obama is aware that the volunteers include an upright American former Congresswoman Cynthia McKinney as well as Nobel laureate Merid Maguire. Dr. Mahathir bin Mohamad, Chairman, Perdana Global Peace Organization. Update on UK detainees. Written by Free Gaza Movement, July 5, 2009. We have just heard that at least 3 of the 6 British Free Gaza detainees are being put on a flight to London in the morning, due to arrive at Heathrow at 13:30. We are currently unable to make contact with the group, which has